Welcome to the shop. You all have seen this plane out there on the YouTubes. Several guys have it. It just popped up. China Hobby Line had them, and I think a bunch of us were very fortunate to get them and start playing around with them. It is very different. Never heard of the company. AviNationRC. But this is a neat little kit. Super lightweight. I think it's EPS foam. But the front of it's all hard plastic, which is good because you'll see me pile it in several times hard as trying to figure out how to hand launch the thing. We'll get into that later. But anyway, so look, the thing's super light. It's a neat twin 35 millimeter EDF 4S. China Hobby Line has these little 4S batteries. One is included in the kit. It's basically got landing gear, but I don't think anybody's flying it with the landing gear. And, they're just chucking it. And I'll get into more detail there. But anyway, and then there's another little hatch in the back that fits a AR-630 perfectly. Just the right amount of room. So if you want to use that kind of, receiver, as far as have a gyro, maybe launch assist, that's what I did. Neat little kit, a lot of little pieces and parts included in it. Let me get into some of the 5-second assembly. You get a whole bunch of these cables, and what they are basically is conversion cables to whatever kind of radio you're using, whatever kind of receiver. So you have these extensions that you plug in. A little different, but they're all included. It all works out great. There are a special kind of Y connector which goes to the ESCs. One is, I believe, 4 conductor. The other is like 2 conductor. And that'll give you everything you need to be able to plug this into, in my case, a Spectrum receiver. And they slide in the back basically into the compartment along with the Elevon connectors. So it's really, you got 3 channels for this thing. Pretty simple setup. I'll go into a little bit more detail on how I set it up. And then we're going to take this thing and fly it. The only thing that has to be done to this plane is to glue on this fin that goes underneath to give it a little, yaw stability. One is the same color as the bottom of the wing. The other one is clear. I went with clear. Don't know why. I just thought maybe that was cool. But anyway, a little foam tack, slide it in there. There's a little slot for it, and you're done. Let it dry up, and it's great. I will say, I landed this thing on asphalt runway, and darn durable. Very durable. Installing the battery, I found I wanted to push it back at least a centimeter or so, or a finger thickness. So what I do is I plug it in and then wrap or basically fold that lead and shove it into the fuselage, then push back the ESCs, and now I have a little extra room to put the battery as far back as it'll go. Super important to make sure there's no cables popping up because you might lose your hatch. I was fortunate and I didn't, but I know Brian Phillips did on a couple flights. So just make sure that those magnets click together well. There are 2 little divots on the bottom of this plane. That's where I'm sure they initially said that's where the CG should be, but it needs to be about 1 centimeter, 2 centimeters behind that if you can. And that's kind of hard to do with that bigger battery in there, so you got to fiddle around a bit to get it to balance well enough. To give some extra clearance in the battery bay, a lot of those cables I shove back into where the receiver is. Suggest you remove the servo arm on that steerable nose wheel because you're going to be belly landing this thing. All right, everything's ready to roll. We've got our 4S battery installed in the battery bay, pushed back as far as we can to get the CG right, and let's give it a whirl. Boy, did I struggle with hand launching. I watched all these guys and it just flew out of their hands. Me, I'm a horrible hand launcher, clearly. After numerous attempts and having one of my fans come off, which screwed right back on, I kind of finally figured it out. Do it the way I used to do my FPV wings, and that's just kind of a side toss, and that was the trick. I did use the hand launch assist mode. It might have helped. I struggled with it, finally got it to launch, so I guess it's helping. So a couple things. First off is my AS3X settings. So I have 3 different flight modes, one for safe, one for flight, and one for hand launch. Flight mode 2 is for hand launch, and I increased the pitch gains so it hand launches better, and then enabled that in hand launch assist, as you see here, and that seemed to make it work pretty well. So I'm pretty happy with that. Now I finally figured out how to launch the thing. Let me show you a flight with it.
And that worked.
Now it's finally in the air. Got to do a little trimming and tuning. AS3X on it with 1X 40-50-60, which was too much.
There we go, folks. Super excited about this.
Using that little China Hobby Line battery that came with it, little 4S, worked perfect.
Got AS3X on it right now. I got high rates. Boy, it flies really well. Haven't had to touch trim on it. Maybe a click of up.
I'm about ready to test to see if the gyro gains are too high, and well, they are. If you notice, the pitch was way too high. The thing was bouncing pretty hard, so backed off, it calmed down, flew fine, but I did make some changes to that. I did find that the higher gains allowed it to hand launch better, but then it was an issue in flight. So I just basically made two different flight modes, one with much lower gains. Performance was really good. I mean, there was just something about a flying wing. It's very slippery and just flies well. Aerobatics of doing loops and rolls and such, it did very, very well. All in all, very, very stable. The battery performance was excellent. I mean, if you baby it, you know, I had my timer set for like 5 minutes, but you could go well over that. I was really amazed at how efficient those two little 35mm EDFs were.
Super, very, very aerobatic. Just got to dial down the gains. I have it on 1X 40-50-60. Gonna go half gain, I think, on that. Landing.
Landing's pretty simple. Chop the throttle and just glide her in. And the glide ratio is pretty darn good.
All right. Pretty cool.
Welcome back. I want to talk about a couple things about this plane. One is, after I sorted out the launching, the hand launch, it was a lot of fun to fly. I mean, it was really enjoyable, easy. It flies fast, so this isn't for beginners, but it is not a hard plane to fly. Now I'm flying it with AS3X, with launch assist. I'm sure this thing will fly just fine without any of that. I set it up, that's how I set it up. I haven't played around with the differential thrust or anything. I felt like it didn't really need it. Here's the thing about this little guy. So when you get this, you do need to get some special batteries. China Hobby Line has these guys, these 4S Lightnings. These are high voltage LiPos. They also have slightly smaller batteries that might not be high voltage, just regular LiPo, which I think frankly would be better because it's going to give you better options for getting it in this tight little compartment in here and getting that CG back a little bit. On that launch, when I was launching this, you do need to add a fair amount of up elevator, and the launch assist that I have set up does that. That's what helped me get a good clean launch, even when I was doing the side toss, which I think is the best way. I did it with my larger FPV wings back in the day. So anyway, if you're interested in this, you know, there's a link in the description below. If you have any questions about this, how I have it set up, I went through as much detail as I can in the video, but if there are things that you're questioning about it, give me a holler. Love to talk to you about it or chat with you on YouTube's. Have a great day. Thanks for watching.